Joining us on the program, I am thrilled to have with us Mr. Jim Shepard from the Outdoor Shooting and Tactical Wires. One of the reasons why I'm thrilled is because I said yesterday, Jim, that perhaps you and I could have a drink last night, and I fell asleep in my hotel room, and I apologize for not giving you a call. So
if you had called, I would have been asleep and wouldn't have answered, so that's quite all right.
Okay, good. Now I don't feel nearly as bad about standing you up.
There is no guilt whatsoever about that, I swear.
I got off the air, and I went back to my room, and I thought, I'll just lay down for just a minute or two, and the next thing, what happened to the sun? It's gone down.
It's nice to wake up in the clothes you went to bed in without being hungover.
Exactly. Oh, I'm telling you, this is a tiring show. I mean, you're walking around a lot.
No kidding.
And
I came steaming in here like a battleship and dropped in the chair.
How's the show going, though?
I think it's going well. Everybody I've talked to seems to be pretty optimistic about it. I mean, the grumbling and the screeching about everything last year seems to be better. Of course, they reduced the size, they widened the aisles, they put up signs. It's amazing what finding things will do for you, but I'm still lost as a chicken out there. I mean, it's still like,
it is sort of a
three-dimensional chess, and I'm not good at one-dimensional chess. So, but it's a good show. I'm seeing a lot of traffic and people telling me they're writing orders, and that's what it's about.
Absolutely. So what are some of the products that everybody's talking about this year?
The products everybody's talking about this year, I think the big story is North American Arms is the only person I met that doesn't have a 1911 this year. Everybody, and then Duck has a 1911
100th anniversary, you got to expect it.
There's 500 new models. It's a 100th anniversary of the 5,000th iteration of the 1911. And the good part about it is, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
John Moses Browning, yada, 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 I mean, it's a great gun. It's a classic design. It's an all-American design. It's as American as we are.
Yep.
Ask a lot of people in Europe who looked at it for a lot of years. They're even making them now. Of course, they hadn't seen anything with the muzzle since 1955, but, that's going very well. Everything's miniaturizing, though. Everybody's looking at the little pocket rocket. They want a little. So the big deal is they've got a 9mm. It was 380. Now they've gone up. Now it's up to 9mm. It's a little crisp for me, but that's a nice gun,
Yeah.
Everybody's gotten smaller, and I think part of it is the fact that people are taking responsibility for themselves.
Yeah.
Which we've always, we've all preached, you're responsible for you, and when seconds count, police are minutes away, and all that sort of stuff that we come out with. It makes sense, and it's working for people. I see a softening in the black rifle, not in the sales of the modern rifle, but in the mall ninja versions of the model rifle.
Okay.
I mean, the military and the police and the real tactical guys are still doing that. But now the hunting calibers are out there. It's finally become what it should be, which is an all-around rifle that works for everyone.
Absolutely. In fact, I think there's been some discussion over the past 6 months or so about whether or not, can you just simply refer to what we used to call 5 years ago as a black rifle, or a couple of years ago as the modern sporting rifle. Can you now just call it a rifle?
It's a rifle. Well, I think it's funny. I had a discussion with a sort of a non-gun person yesterday who was here kind of incognito, and they said, nobody needs an assault rifle. It's an assault rifle. I said, not an assault rifle. And I happened to be by a booth with a lever action rifle.
Yeah.
And I said, what's this? He said, it's a hunting rifle. I said, I beg to differ. If you ask my ancestors, the Cherokee, that's an assault rifle. Believe me, they marched them from North Carolina to Oklahoma with those.
Yeah.
Those are assault rifles. And it's like, what do you mean? I said, what the problem is? You're all emotion and no fact. You don't understand history. You have no perspective on what you're doing. It's all about what I feel, not what I know. You don't know enough to have the discussion. And I think there's more of that going around. I think the California decision, oh my gosh, Fresno judge says that this is unreasonable.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Unconstitutionally vague. I know. It's unbelievable. But, I'm actually glad that you're here because top of the hour, last hour when the show began, I was going over a story that was in Newsweek. Jim, Newsweek got sold for $1, and I think they probably got their money's worth.
And I think it was almost as good a deal as Manhattan.
Ben Adler is the author of this piece. Among Ben's credentials here, he wrote the angry rant from a New Yorker column for the Internet Food Association, which is a D.C. food-based blog.
Yeah.
He worked for the New Republic. He's written for the Daily Beast, the Atlantic, the Guardian, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and the American Prospect, as well as the Center for American Progress. He's got this piece that is just full of nonsense. In fact, let me just give you a couple of quotes here. He says, whether you think a ban on police-style assault weapons is good policy or not, it is curious to see that Republicans are not even bothering to make legitimate arguments against such proposals. I've never heard the phrase police-style assault weapons before. I'm used to the gun control advocates using military-style assault weapons.
Yeah.
Now we're going to police-style assault
Well, they
weapons.
got their brains
What
beat
does that
out on
mean?
the military style, got their butts kicked, so now they're going to try something else. What does it mean? It means you don't know what the hell he's talking about, basically.
Carolyn McCarthy, he says, introduced last week a ban on high-capacity clips.
What, for hair? I'm sorry. I got a good bit of criticism last week because I said, as empathetic as I am to Carolyn McCarthy, she only got elected because her family got slaughtered, because she's incapable of turning on a light. Otherwise, she's a one-trick pony. I'm not honoring a Carolyn McCarthy comment anymore. She speaks for herself.
Can you describe the difference? Perhaps if Mr. Adler is listening, though, can you explain the difference between a magazine and a clip? Because this is something that I've seen journalists do for the past week and a half, is get these two terms confused, and it drives me crazy because it means that they really don't understand what they're writing about.
Well, first of all, a magazine doesn't come out of a gun. It's a permanent thing. You load the magazine on the rifle. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about, it's an ammo carrier, for God's sakes. It's the battery pack for your flash gun is all it is. It's what your ammunition goes on. Mm-hmm. And if you can't distinguish between the two of those, come on, it's not that hard. A clip, look, I'm guilty sometimes of saying bullet when I mean ammunition. The bullet's at the end of the ammunition.
Right.
It's the projectile. But all it speaks to, Cam, is the fact that a lot of us presume knowledge when we should only assume intelligence in people and try to talk them. I had a long conversation with the NSSF this morning about the fact that I had a mainstream, network assignment guy call me. You know what he wanted to know? Did they make a dummy's guide to guns? I said, no, but it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And what he wanted was something that could be in the newsroom, not that they had to go online. It's basically wanted was a pictorial guide. If it goes around and around, it's a revolver.
Right.
And if it goes this way, it's a pistol.
Yeah.
And a pistol and a revolver are different things. They're both handguns. Mm-hmm. And a single shot, tell me how many times that will fire. One.
Yeah.
And what's the difference in a high-capacity magazine and a regular capacity magazine? Well, marketing, basically.
Exactly. I mean, that's the other thing that's really interesting is you see these terms being that really
they turn them on us, and they're innocent terms.
They are. And I remember it was probably 5 years ago. There's a group of college librarians that every year comes out with a list of words and phrases that should be retired from the English language. And like 5 years ago, the phrase assault weapon
was on
these college librarians said, get rid of the phrase assault weapon because it means nothing. It means whatever the person who's saying it wants it to mean.
Yeah.
And we see that again with the high capacity magazine versus regular capacity magazine. I think one of the gun blogs, Snowflakes in Hell, was doing some numbers today and pointed out there were over 1 million firearms last year that were sold that can accept magazines of more than 10 rounds. That's pretty common use.
Yeah.
The idea of a high-capacity magazine, well, I guess whatever you would consider to be high would make it a high-capacity magazine.
I guess a 2 would do that. If you're a single-shot person, you doubled your output, your rate of fire.
Right.
And the thing about it is, I think when we say high-capacity magazines, what we really meant in the industry was we finally have gotten technologically advanced enough to build a reliable carrier that's capable of pushing up more ammunition and not jamming, because that was the problem with the old ones. They didn't work. The followers tilted. And that's a kind of inside baseball, but that's what happens. We're all inexact in our speech because we all speak shorthand to each other. And the problem is the people that don't understand the shorthand kind of suborn it and use it for their own definition and twist it. And since they're all emotion and no fact, you can't argue with them.
Well, and that's the other thing is that, now I think you're starting to see just more that is simply bad reporting. And I wish that reporters, I wish that Mr. Adler, for instance, would have given you a call and said, okay, Mr. Shepard, do you have a couple of minutes?
Somebody.
Yeah, can I just ask you
anybody.
these questions? Robert Verbruggen, actually, at National Review last week, did a journalist guide to firearms that he posted online, and it was, a little bit of snark. They probably wouldn't want to post it in the newsroom, but it did actually just lay out, here are some of the common things that you guys get wrong, and here's what you really should know about these things.
Well, I was having the conversation with this assignment guy, and he talked about the dummies guide and all the other stuff, and I said, I have 2 words for you when you have a question and you want to talk to somebody you trust. He said, what? I said, Stephen Hunter. He is of you.
Yep.
I were of you. He still is of you. He still writes great commentary. He's a great
At the Washington Post?
At the Washington Post, he's as good as it gets, and he's a gun person, and he really enjoys just shooting you guys off like rockets with that.
Mm-hmm.
But ask him. He'll tell you.
Yeah.
He's capable. And the problem is they don't want to admit they know anybody, and they don't want to admit what they don't know.
Right.
I'm there. Yo, pro, I can't remember your name. There's lots of people. Nobody wants to admit they're not a subject matter expert, especially if they trade on their name.
But see, this is where I don't think there's any shame for a reporter to admit that they're not an expert on something. I mean, frankly, you look at the Associated Press, and there may be the one journalistic entity out there that has more specialists than any other. They've got the technology writers, the health writers, the business writers, the government writers, whatever. They don't have a gun writer.
No.
These reporters are going into these stories blind for the most part.
It's like local news.
Yeah.
Now, you're an excellent interviewer. No, shine intended here. You know why you're a good interviewer?
Why's that?
You listen, you ask a question, and you pay attention to the answer. Well, golly, isn't that kind of the basics of communication? Not if you're in television. It's not. You're thinking of the next question because you're clueless. You don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
I used to do business reporting when I couldn't balance a checkbook. It didn't work very well for me. So what did they do? They put me in charge of the unit. That's pretty good. I don't have to do it that way. And I got subject matter experts. But you have to learn about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I can use I guess I can use this. I'll do. You have to stop me if you don't want me to. The CNBC story that they did, on the Remington 700,
yeah,
the hatchet job they did, and I know those people. I ran that shop. They asked me what I thought about the story, and the reporter who did the piece, and I said, well, it's not a snake. You held it like it was going to bite you, and you automatically made it patently obvious to everyone that you didn't have a clue what you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And then you went ahead and backed that up with your facts. And you proved that premise. You destroyed your credibility because it was obvious you didn't know what you were talking about.
Right.
And I said, would it have taken you 15 minutes to go into a gun shop somewhere and somebody show the hole is where the thing comes out. If you're behind that, you're good.
And it is amazing that, again, you can spend weeks or a month on stories, and you don't think about that. I guess it's because, again, to me, it goes back to they must just inherently not want to know.
Yeah.
They must
have
not
no
want
curiosity.
To learn.
They don't want to know.
Which why would you want to be a reporter if you have no curiosity? But that's probably another topic altogether.
Leave show business?
Yeah, okay, good point.
The glamorous life, working till midnight, getting up, taking a 5 o'clock flight, flying all day, working tomorrow night. Yeah, I know, the glamour of television.
Yeah, and along these same lines, I'm going to give you one more quote here from Ben Adler's column in Newsweek. He says, quote, it is appropriate for gun control opponents to caution rush into passing legislation in the wake of tragedy. And if they have credible evidence that a specific proposal runs afoul of the Second Amendment or will create another negative externality, they should present it. But they should not distort the nature of a proposal, whether it is restoring the quote-unquote assault weapons ban or perhaps removing Arizona's recently passed law allowing residents to carry concealed weapons. As he says, don't distort the nature of a proposal, he distorts the nature of proposals.
Well, of course he does.
I mean, this is, Jim, it's like we're living in a bizarro world. And I don't know, I really don't know how you combat. I mean, one of the reasons why NRA News was around was to combat this media bias. But I feel like right now I'm Custer, and I'm just looking out and, well, there are a lot of Indians around here. I didn't think there'd be so many Indians today.
We're stopping to take on ice.
I mean, it's just coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
What do we do about this?
Well, I think we do what the average citizen's done and just quit paying any attention at all to them and watch something else. Go out and find your own news.
Yeah.
That's why you have a voice.
Yeah.
You have a voice because people realize you know what you're talking about. And now the problem with these people that have said we need to democratize everything is they realize nobody gives a rip what they think. And they're having problems with that.
Right.
All of a sudden, New Yorkers realize we really don't care what you think. I didn't when I lived there. I just didn't tell them that,
Yeah.
you know. And it's earth-shaking to these people to see their numbers go down, their credibility go down, because eventually they know the money's going to go the same way. And let's be honest, they're in it for the money and for the stroke on it. There are not a lot of real pure news guys left out there anymore because it's been twinkified to the point that it's more important to look good than to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And to anybody that says that's not the case, I have two more words: Fred Graham. Fred Graham from CBS News. By God, he sounded like he's right from where he was in Tennessee, but there was never a smarter constitutional expert than Fred Graham. So what happens when Heller happens, McDonald happens, I walk into the Supreme Court and Fred Graham goes, oh my God, they dug all of us up, didn't they? And why did they dig us up? Because we knew what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And they realized we can't go to the Supreme Court and fake our way through this because we don't know what they're saying. When Fred sat next to me and he goes, you have any idea what this is? I said, I've been gone a while too, Bubba. But that's the problem. And credibility, you earn your credibility. You don't just get it because we work for the #1 most credible source in news. By your measure,
Right.
not mine.
Sure.
It's a rubber ruler, and that's part of it. And I think one of the problems they face now is that we have managed to maintain civil discourse, and they get strident, and they get and they go Nancy Pelosi on you.
I was watching now. Granted, this was MSNBC primetime, and I watched literally about 80 seconds of it last night. And I would not consider their
That would
primetime.
put me to sleep too.
I would not consider their primetime lineup to be straight news. It is it's Olbermann and Maddow, and I think this was Larry
Sure.
O'Donnell.
It's like Fox.
Yeah.
They're opinion people at night. That's what they're for.
Yeah, and he's interviewing Trent Franks, congressman from Arizona, and he is screaming. It wasn't even an interview. He was screaming at the congressman. And I caught the tail end of the interview. I may have lasted 80 seconds. It may not have been that long, and I flipped. I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
This was, and if this is what journalism is becoming, and if this is where we're going, you got to be like Larry O'Donnell, you got to be like Olbermann, or even on the right, you got to be like Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, you got to O'Reilly somebody.
Right. I have no interest in doing that.
No.
And I don't think while it's entertaining and it's fun, and you can learn some things over the course of an interview, it's not. I don't think it's that beneficial to the consumers. Of news.
What are they doing? What value you're adding to the proposition? Nothing. It's entertainment value at that point. You're a performer. You're not a journalist. Don't presume that.
Yeah.
A journalist gets out of the way of the story. I was talking to someone this morning, and he said, why have the wires been successful? Why do you have 175,000 subscribers on the Outdoor Wire? I said, because there's one star, the story.
Mm-hmm.
There are no celebrities. An anchor is what holds a boat on the bottom.
Right.
When I was running news divisions, network news divisions, and I had to do a story where the anchor sat on camera and read it, that was an open admission. I didn't do my job. If he's going to be reading something, he should be narrating something. He shouldn't be sitting there with his mug square in the middle of the screen because I didn't have the resources to cover a story. That's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be adding value to the proposition. Well, look, tell stories are part of it. You have to do them.
Right.
Because you can't be everywhere and be everything to everybody. But you want to try to advance the cause, not just regurgitate it. We talk about it. We develop a story. We try to push it forward. You do too. It's one thing. It's okay to read Numbskull's story there and talk about it because we're advancing it.
Sure.
And if Numbskull's listening, I apologize, but I'm sorry. But you didn't create enough of an impression for me to remember your name. And if I remember your name, don't call me. But it comes down to that, and it's okay to have thoughtful discourse to talk about what we're doing, and it's okay for us to sit here and say, look, we're pro Second Amendment. We're not hiding behind something. I'm not presuming to be the dead square plumb standard of the way things should be covered. I have an agenda. I'm for this. And it's fun to me because I spent 30 years trying to play down the middle of the street.
Right.
Well, the street's not straight anymore.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. What we do on this program is not what I'm sure Edward R. Murrow would have considered to be pure journalism. We do have commentary, we do have opinion, but my primary goal for the 3 hours that we're on the air every day, and I've said this before, I'll say it again: if I'm the smartest person that the audience hears on any given night, I have failed at my job. Because my job is to talk to people who are smarter than me so that they can explain things to me and they can explain things to the audience. And if I'm able to do that, I think that I've done a good job.
My job is to represent the guy who's not there, is to ask the question that my dad, the maintenance guy, would ask, or my mother, the fourth grade school teacher. That's my job. My job's not to try to get out there and twist a guy in knots and ask him the question and ask him what kind of tree he would be if he were a tree. I don't care. A weeping fig. It doesn't matter. But tell me why I care. And that doesn't mean that we have to tell you why you care. We just need to put the facts out there, and you will figure out why you care or if you care.
Right.
And the problem that the network guys are having is America has voted with their clicker.
Yeah.
You're not relative to me anymore. You represent people that don't represent me. And, I thought My Mother the Car was one of the greatest TV shows ever. And it wasn't. And I can still sing the lyrics and all that, but it was entertainment. It wasn't put out there as here's what a 1928 Porter does. If I thought my 1928 Porter would have talked to me, I'd have bought one. Because I think it's pretty cool. Now they all talk to you. They tell you your fuel's low,
right.
your door's open, your seatbelt's not. If I wanted my mother-in-law in the car, I'd go get her.
Wow, we're living in My Mother the Car now. I never thought about it that way, Jim.
Jerry Van Dyke, a man ahead of his time.
How did we end up with living in My Mother the Car rather than living in I Dream of Jeannie? Whatever. Why couldn't it have been Barbara Eden in everybody's living room?
Yeah, who was in that bottle?
Hey, Jim, as always, sir, it is a real pleasure to get a chance to talk with you. I could spend 3 hours just chatting with you, sir. You're a fantastic
I don't
individual.
think I could put up with me for 3 hours.
No, seriously, you're fantastic. The shooting wire, the outdoor wire, the tactical wire. You have the fishing wire.
Yeah, and then there's a dealer wire that you can't get, so don't go looking.
Okay.
And there are a couple of others that are coming down the pike. So,
really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I know. And there go the weekends.
Yeah, and we haven't even got a chance to talk about the TV show and things.
TV show's doing well, and we're doing a lot of stuff.
That's great.
But it's the material. It's not we're just the delivery. We're not the message.
Absolutely, Jim. As always, sir.
Thanks
Thanks
brother.
again, man.
I appreciate it.